People don't leave the dialogue with radically different views, but they leave with the shape of their heart pretty radically changed.
You're listening to Good Faith Weekly. I'm Mitch Randall.
And I'm Missy Randall.
We're here each week exploring the intersection of faith and culture.
We find people who stand up, speak out, and step forward.
For inclusion, freedom, and justice for all.
It's time for Good Faith Weekly.
Brought to you by Good Faith Media. Welcome to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, Missy and I are going to catch up, and we're going to talk about some losses that we suffered this week as a society. And then later on the pod, we sat down with Kristyn Komarnicki, who's the Director of Dialogue and Convening at Christians for Social Action. Kristyn directs a program bringing people together to talk about the importance of loving one another, no matter who we are. So it's a great pod. Stay tuned. Hello there, Missy.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How about you?
I am road trip excited.
Okay. Where are you heading?
Yes.
Are you taking me with you?
Yes. And I think I was just sitting here thinking about this because we are very excited. We've got a little road trip this weekend down to Texas to a lake house with some friends.
Yes.
And we're super stoked up. It's like, as we're rushing to get this recording done and get on the road, I thought, is there any other kind of like excited than like road trip excited?
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that a little bit.
No,
Yeah,
you're
I'm
like
excited
you're
to get in the car with
like
you.
There's something about. All right, never mind. There's just something about
there is an excitement about
organization and packing and getting in the car and getting on the road for several hours. You're like, this will be so fun. And then, spoiler alert, by the time you're heading home,
you're just wanting to get home.
So anyways, yes, we're busy packing and loading in the midst of trying to get recording done for this week because we'll be at the lake this weekend and that's a fun thing. So
it
I'm
is a fun
excited.
thing. It is going to be a fun time.
So, all right, before we go, I also need to acknowledge that I feel like as a culture, we're all in mourning this week.
Yeah.
We have had some pop culture losses this week you and I wanted to talk about, and we'll go through one by one. The first was Malcolm Jamal Warner, who passed away, who drowned while on vacation. He, of course, played Theo on The Cosby Show. And so, of course, our social media feeds have been filled with, reminiscence of episodes and things. And so did you watch The Cosby Show as a kid?
Well, yeah,
okay.
Duh.
I know that's kind of a rhetorical
it
question.
was must-see TV, Missy.
I know. And I was thinking about that and not even, I don't know if you know this about me or not, but I grew up in, pretty conservative communities.
I've heard that about you.
Pretty white communities, pretty religious communities. I mean, I was pretty sheltered in the grand scheme of things and just not realizing what that show opened my mind to as a child.
Right. Of
what it meant to be, a family who looked different than me, but also, was the same. Yeah. And so I think at the time, not realizing the impact it had on me, but it was one window into broadening my worldview that was super important.
And especially Jamal's character, Theo Huxtable. I mean, I identified with him. I mean, we were about the same age. In fact, we're exactly the same age. On his death, he was 54 years old. And he grew up, I grew up watching him, play this adolescent character and all that meant with the dynamics of his family. So, I had an affinity for him. I really related to him in a lot of ways, just as a young male. And so I love the stories. I can still remember those Thursday nights, my mom making certain that dinner was ready before 7:00 Central Time because we would all be sitting in front of the televisions with our TV trays and macaroni and cheese, and whatever meat was on the plate.
Were the TV trays metal or wooden? I mean,
they were wooden.
They were. Oh, you had graduated from the metal ones.
Yeah, well,
oh, wow. You were living life.
I don't mean to brag, but we had wood paneling in our house, so our TV trays matched our wood paneling.
So of all of the years of must-see TV, I should have prepped for this because I didn't. What was your favorite Thursday night must-see TV show?
Oh, my favorite TV show?
Yeah.
That was always Cheers. Had to be Cheers.
I was gonna say.
So I mean, I really love the Cosby Show.
Me too.
Loved the Family Ties, but Cheers. I mean, with the baseball angle, and
true.
everything. I mean, the Boston Red Sox. I mean, that was my show.
True. Well, if Frasier was part of Must See TV, I don't remember. I might have to put Frasier in there. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I agree. Seeing Theo very much as like my older brother, because they wrote his character to be such a typical teenager growing up in the 80s. I mean, I loved, of course, the episode with the Gordon Guttrell, whatever that designer was, the shirt he bought for his date.
$90, and his dad, Cliff finds out $90.
No, return it. And so it just made me think, how many times do we do that? Like, you're spending what on what? I can make that myself. And I'm thinking, that kind of translates into adulthood home projects. So anyways, that was so funny. And then one I had forgotten about, remember when he gets his ear pierced and he's trying to hide it from his parents?
That was such a good one, yes.
When he's trying to sit a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could all, have
I did not ever get my ears pierced.
You did not.
No.
But anyways, it was just such a human experience. And like I said, it just was broadening my worldview in such a way that I didn't even realize was happening until much later. So that was an important part of our upbringing.
Yeah, that one, I mean, his death really hit close to home. And
it really
hurt.
did.
Yeah.
His legacy is just incredible with what he was able to do in his career. So the second one, Ozzy Osbourne.
I know. I mean, it was first Jamal, then Ozzy, and I was not a heavy metal fan growing up.
Neither, but I have something to talk about with him. But go on.
Because I grew up in evangelical churches, and of course Ozzy Osbourne was probably above the devil and people we were supposed to demise.
Exactly.
But here's the secret thing: I secretly liked his music.
You did?
I didn't listen to it or buy the cassette tapes as you did when I was my age. But I did like his music, Black Sabbath and everything that they put out during those times.
I couldn't even tell you what one of his songs would be. And I know that's very embarrassing. Probably I know them, would recognize them on radio, but just don't know. Yeah. But no, I was never a heavy metal fan. So it was very easy for me growing up to also just feel like that was evil because I didn't like it. Right. So that was an easy no-go for me. But I'll tell you how he impacted me. And that was the show The Osbournes.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah. I mean, that really kind of softened him up for the entirety of culture. I mean, when he, played, I mean, not didn't play, he was the dad in that reality show, and just the whole family and the crazy dynamics that played out on that show. But Ozzy was kind of the central figure. I mean, it was kind of strange. He was the stable one.
He really was. And as I was thinking about that and how, in that show and how much I really loved it. And also, again, it opened my eyes to another way of, another family and what that looked like. And it might not have looked exactly like mine, but I don't know. I feel like it was just another window into a world that I didn't know, but again, broadening my worldview of what family is and what family looks like. And I found an article in The Guardian that I had a couple of quotes I wanted to read because I thought they were just great. The first one says, "The Osbourne family couldn't be less like yours, and yet everyone could see parts of themselves in them."
Oh, 100%.
It is so true in how we look at the other, you're not doing it like, and so at one point in my life is you're not doing it like I was taught, or you're not doing it like me, therefore it's wrong. And that was just it was early aughts. And so we had little kids, babies and preschoolers, and still, again, very much in that kind of, in a narrow-minded box of mine of what family and what functionality looked like. And that was, it was a show that I watched and thought, look at this. They don't, do things the way we do them, but they loved each other. They were hysterical. And it just, again, another time of broadening my worldview. So The Guardian goes on to say, "So when the dust settles and all the tributes to start fall away, Ozzy Osbourne will leave behind an almost unparalleled legacy of music. But he also left behind a TV show where he got so angry on a beach that he started screaming personal insults at the sea. And that's okay too." I just thought that was a great way to kind of wrap that up, because that's how he impacted me. Now, of course, I'll go back and explore more the music angle. But for me, it was that show and just, again, expanding my my
Yeah, both
understanding.
of those shows, one fictional, one reality television show, does. I mean, when you get a peek behind the curtain a little bit, and whether it is fiction or nonfiction, you get to see these families uh, in their own narratives. It really does open your eyes, and you do see yourselves in these stories, and that's really good.
Well, and also offers you a space for empathy and understanding
Yeah.
of others, and that's really important,
So,
believe it or not,
yeah.
in our day and age.
Yeah. So Jamal and Ozzy, they will be missed.
And then number 3
Mhm.
is Stephen Colbert
Ah,
and
yeah.
The Late Show.
Yeah, it
Rip.
got canceled.
Rip.
Yeah.
That has been a tough one.
That has been a tough one. I mean, it really was a shocker over the entire media landscape because, I mean, it is the number one late show on network television. And I mean, in the Ed Sullivan Theater, I mean, it's got a historical slant
It's
to it. I mean,
iconic.
followed Dave Letterman. I mean, good night. I mean, this was the pinnacle of late night television. And, don't want to equate him to Johnny Carson, but he was kind of the Johnny Carson of our age when Dave retired.
Right. I think they all have their own,
Yeah.
I don't know, iconotry. What would you
Oh,
say?
wow. Did you just coin a phrase?
I
like
think I
that.
might have just made up a word, y'all.
Been hanging around me too
They're
long.
all icons in their own
Sure.
right. So I don't know that you can directly compare, but for us, I mean, he has been just a mainstay for us at night. And I know, one thing I've learned about him is I've talked about kind of what I've learned from the Cosby Show and what I learned from the Osbournes, but one thing I've really thought about that I have learned from him, because he is such a strong person of faith, is that comedy and faith can go together.
Yeah.
And he is infinitely brilliant human being, but the ways in which he is able to help us, like he says, I just try to come on and help people process what they've been hearing throughout the day. But also being someone who is just so recognizes that foundation and his faith and how that guides and helps him interpret the world. I think has been a really interesting difference in the way he entertains and has meant a lot to me, is that those two are not mutually exclusive, and you can have and express both while laughing. As I've said a number of times, laughter is my love language. And so if you can make me laugh, if I can make you laugh, that's like a drug for me.
Right.
And so kind of having that reinforced has been really great. And I pulled a quote of his, it says, "Do you know what I like about comedy? You can't laugh and be afraid at the same time of anything. If you're laughing, I defy you to be afraid."
Yeah.
And I think because I live most of my life in fear.
True.
So I might try to challenge him on that, but I just love the quote and I love the sentiment of that.
Yeah. I wrote my article this week about the cancellation of The Late Show. And as I was doing my research, 2 interviews that he conducted and was a part of kept resurfacing. And the one was with CNN's Anderson Cooper, shortly after Anderson lost his mom. And he and Colbert had this very genuine conversation about grief. And Colbert just, I mean, eloquently discusses his grief at an early age, losing family members, and how he has turned to comedy and laughter as a balm for that, but not to run away from it, but to absorb it and to understand that grief is a part of life. And his faith teaches him that both suffering and laughter can simultaneously coexist. And it's a remarkable conversation. You check it online if you haven't checked it out, between he and Anderson Cooper. And then the second one, which I was unfamiliar with until this last week, and that's with pop singer Dua Lipa, when she asked him specifically about his faith and his comedy, which is an interesting juxtaposition
I haven't
in
seen
that
it.
conversation.
Is it a video?
Yeah,
I'll have to go watch it.
It's on The Late Show. He was interviewing her on The
Okay,
Late Show.
I guess I
and
just
she
didn't
asked
see
him
that one.
And it is one of the most brilliant, beautiful oratories about faith and comedy that I've ever heard in my life. And I quote him in my article this week. And so listen to what he had to say to Dua Lipa. He answers her question about faith and comedy and the importance of it. He says, laughter keeps you from having fear of it, whatever it is. And fear is a thing that keeps you from turning to evil devices to save you from the sadness. So if there's some relationship between my faith and my comedy, It's that no matter what happens, you are never defeated. You must understand and see this in the light of eternity and find some way to love and laugh with each other. And it's exactly what you just said.
I love that. Yeah, it really is. And I'm telling you, just as an aside on a personal note, you cannot live in a house with preachers' kids and not understand comedy and faith because let me tell you, they can expose lots of comedy in the Bible.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead.
No, so I mean, I'm really sad that The Late Show has been canceled. My fear is that there are going to be more shows canceled just because of where we are in culture today, corporate world, political world. But I can guarantee one thing: the comedians are not going to go away.
Mm-mm.
They will find a medium in which to do their craft, and they will continue to bring us laughs.
Let's hope so.
They will continue to help us cope with reality and to face our fears. And in doing so, when we laugh in the face of tyranny, and that scares tyranny to death.
And that's what I think in reflecting again on this week and just the losses we've experienced or we've been watching unfold is that, like I said, in my own experience from each of these shows that we've talked about, I've learned something, I've grown in my life. And that's to say that we need art and we need artists.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize the importance of that. And we also need to recognize when those voices might be being silenced or, constricted.
Absolutely. Well, again, kind of a sad week, but in going down the memories of Jamal, Ozzy, and The Late Show, I am inspired. And so it would be easy for me to get down and discouraged. But even in the midst of tragedy and injustice, I am inspired by their life, their careers, and the product that they put out. And that is what keeps me going on.
I agree. So in addition to all these, great actors and comedians we've been talking about, I was also really inspired this week by our guest, Kristyn Komarnicki from Christians for Social Action.
Yeah.
She has a great program she talks to us about, which I found really inspiring.
Yeah, the program that she directs, brings people together to talk about specifically the topic of LGBTQ community and people with all ideologies, different theologies, and they have really deep, meaningful conversations. And it's not a debate as much as a listening session as people are able to share their own stories. So it's a great conversation. We'll be right back with Kristyn.
As a former college baseball player, I know firsthand the challenges athletes face. That's why we're proud to support Christian Athlete Circles, a ministry that is creating spaces and resources to accompany athletes on their faith journey, wherever they are. To learn more about Christian Athlete Circles, go to ChristianAthleteCircles.org.
Welcome back to Good Faith Weekly. On this episode, we got a very special guest with us. Kristyn Komarnicki is the Director of Dialogue and Convening at Christians for Social Action. She's the creator of their Oriented to Love dialogue about sexual gender diversity in the church. Kristyn gathers Christians of diverse sexual orientation, gender identities, and theological convictions together so they can begin to know, understand, and love one another in search of a unity that is deeper than mere agreement. Kristyn, welcome to Good Faith Weekly.
Thank you, Mitch and Missy.
Okay, well, what I really would love to talk about is I hear you have extra room in France where you live. And so I know we have much more important things to talk about. But what I'd really like to know is how could I get over there? Yeah. So we'll come circle back to that later. But yes, you live in France. I think that is super interesting.
Yes. Well, my husband's French, and we've lived in Paris, which is where we met. We've lived in Toronto. We lived in Hong Kong. We lived in Philadelphia. And then after 38 years out of his country, he was really yearning to return. And we're in our 60s now. So we decided to come home to his home. And I love France. It wasn't like he was twisting my arm.
Right.
Get me back here. But it's very different here from the US. And we do have restrooms. So
Kristyn, we've got a similar story. I married a Texan and brought her to the exotic place of Oklahoma 20 years ago.
And now I am yearning to go to France. So we will be in touch about
Very
that.
similar, right? Very similar.
Well,
You are
Kristyn,
very welcome, Missy.
thank you so much for joining us today. So let's just start off our conversation by talking a little bit about the organization you work for, which you just told us is Christians for Social Action. Tell our audience a little bit about the organization and its mission and work.
Well, we've been around for quite a few years, over 50 years, 52, I think now. It was really started in order to sort of marry the social gospel, the social awareness gospel, and the deeply spiritual gospel of personal salvation. So our founder, Ron Sider, he really wanted to take seriously both personal salvation and systemic justice issues and sort of holistic approach to one's faith. So I joined them 26 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I can't believe I've been there so long. I'm definitely the old head there. And it was really cool because I was looking for a way for my faith to be fully bodied, fully engaged. I really wasn't interested in just having a faith that warmed the pew every Sunday. I was looking for something deeper. And I discovered this organization and loved it, what they were doing. And so I approached them, and they actually happened to have a job opening at the time on the editorial side of things. So that's how I got into it.
I read on the website when I was kind of learning about you guys, I loved this quote that says, rather than a typical think tank, CSA is a do tank. And so I thought that was just such a great way to frame an active way of working and kind of, living out your mission. But you work specifically with a program, as I understand it, called Oriented to Love, which provides safe spaces for in-depth conversations, particularly on issues related to the LGBTQ plus community. So tell us why you think this is important for us to have these deeper conversations about the LGBTQ plus community and faith.
Well, I think it's important for us to have conversations across a deep difference in general, whether that's racial difference, intergenerational, interfaith. I just think that is such a formative experience, leaning across difference to meet our other, whatever that other is. And I find, I kind of stumbled into this work, but I find that our sexuality and our gender are so intricately woven with our spiritual lives. So it's a very, very tender, vulnerable meeting spot, our faith and our sexuality, our faith and our gender. These are deep issues of identity. And so, some people have said, oh, could you do this across the political divide? Could you do it around, abortion or gun rights? And I always say, yes, you can. But I really love this intersection, because everybody has a sexuality, everybody has a gender experience, and everybody has a spiritual life. Well, people who identify as believers. And so I just find it a really rich spot for practicing mutual vulnerability and taking those risks of leaning across the aisle, whatever that aisle looks like.
So when you're talking about, leaning across the aisle, so when you bring people together to have, conversations, are these kind of what we would immediately go to, people who are maybe in the LGBTQ plus community, and then those who feel like that is sin? Or is this what you're doing? Or is it just a group of people within the community kind of who are trying to heal and reconcile with their faith?
It's all of the above. So the core of our work, we have a number of iterations, but the core of our work are these weekend dialogues where we have 12 people come together at once. And each of those dialogue groups of those 12 people are curated for maximum diversity. So half the group will identify as cisgender, heterosexual, and half of them will identify somewhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And in each of those sort of subgroups, it's all one group, but in each of those subgroups, some people will be more traditional leaning on their sexual ethic or how they understand gender, and some people will be more progressive leaning. So, but the one thing they all have in common is that they love Jesus, that following Christ is central to their lives, and they are willing to to come towards their sexual other, gender other, theological other in order to try and understand. So the one thing they have in common the fact that they're kind of tired of the conversation, how it has been handled in the past, and they're looking for a different way of connecting across deep difference.
How do you, in these conversations, you said, people come together for a weekend. Okay, that's kind of intense. How do you ensure in these conversations that the people who are coming from the LGBTQ plus community, who are obviously vulnerable in many ways, how are you ensuring their safety and their protection, in the midst of also bringing people in who aren't maybe affirming?
Yes. Well, and some of the queer folks who are in the group are also not what's called affirming. They are sort of leaning into the traditional sexual ethic of celibacy,
Okay.
intentional community, even sometimes mixed orientation marriage. So, well, first of all, we don't use the word safety. We can't guarantee anyone's safety, but we talk about bravery, leaning into brave space. And there's a pretty extensive preparation process. So every week for 8 weeks, there is a homework assignment, and each one sort of builds on the last. And these are opportunities for our participants to practice vulnerability. They're speaking out of their own stories. They're sharing their own convictions, because we don't come together in spite of our differences. We come together because of our differences. So we want to highlight some of those. But each person is pledging. They pledge initially because they sign a little commitment thing saying that they will come as learner, in the posture of learner. And because of that, the whole posture is different. It's not, I'm going to come there to convince you that I'm right, or I'm going to show you what you're doing wrong. But it's really sort of a process of mutual discovery. And so that is, on a weekly basis, they are reminded what we're doing here, why we're coming together, what our stance towards each other is. We're not coming to posit beliefs. We're coming to share some of our beliefs and maybe why we believe those things, but always rooted in our own story, not sort of external. Well, clearly the Bible says that doesn't happen at our dialogues. If it does, that person might be invited to say, how have you personally experienced that in your life, in your faith walk?
And what
Does that make sense?
Yes. What is the kind of the goal, or what do you hope happens at the end of that weekend when people are walking away?
Yes, the goal is to help people grow in their love for each other. Be surprised by the love that they have for their other. Everybody comes into the room. One of my favorite things is at the beginning of a weekend, everybody has a certain level of trepidation. They're worried about offending each other, someone else. They're worried about being offended or triggered. They're worried about being the source of an unpopular theology. They're worried about being triggered by, past experiences. So the anxiety level is pretty high. But very quickly, when we're in our human bodies, in a place of beauty and rest, because we meet at these beautiful retreat centers across the country, the shoulders start to go down. There's more laughter. People start connecting. Sometimes even before we start, just hanging out, because they've met each other on paper. They've seen each other's bios, their photos. They've read about some of the beliefs, and they've also been praying for someone who. One of the weekly exercises is to identify somebody in the bios and in the hopes and fears that everyone has shared that ups your anxiety level in some way. You don't have to try to understand it, but they bother you in some way or make you anxious. And that's the person you're supposed to pray for the coming weeks until the dialogue starts. So they've already been practicing a posture of, okay, sort of front loading, this person irritates me or triggers me in some way, and I'm going to pray for this person. I'm going to ask God how I can be in service to this person in prayer. So everything about the preparation process is a reminder of what we're coming together to do.
I love that. Sorry, I didn't mean to take over. I was
you did
curious
take over.
I did. I'm sorry.
If we were in a conference, we would be talking to you about this.
I'm sure.
Well, Kristyn, I read this really, really good article on your site by Bridget Eileen Rivera, and she talked about the difference between contrast and opposition as these conversations unfold, and we enter into these conversations with people who have different opinions than we do, in particular about LGBTQ community. So talk through that a little bit, and then I got a follow-up question after that.
Hmm. The difference between contrast and opposition. Yeah, I think it has to do with acknowledging the mystery of how the Holy Spirit apparently leads us in different ways. And I think that people come to that conclusion because before meeting, it's very easy for me to say, oh, Mitch, you hold this belief. Well, you're not hearing God right. Mm-hmm. Or Missy might say, Kristyn, oh, if you believe that, then you're wrong and you're not reading the Bible correctly or whatever. But once we get in the room and we start sharing our stories, it's pretty obvious that the hand of God is on every person's life. And we just see it expressed in a different way. So whereas we might have been more black and white before coming into the room, by the end of the weekend, people are saying, whether externally or internally, okay, I really disagree with your conclusions, but clearly you love God and you love the scriptures and you are living your life to the best of your conscience. You people of good conscience. This is what Bridget says in her book, mm-hmm. which is a fantastic book called Heavy Burdens. She'd be a great guest for you to have. She says, people of good conscience come to different conclusions. Mm. And just seeing that modeled in a room where I can't deny the fact that God is at work in your life, right. Even if you come to such radically different conclusions than I do. Then you have to sort of lean into the mystery of that. Mm. And that comes with increased respect for each other and each other's stories. And that giving each other the hearing and the respect and the compassionate curiosity that we hope to receive from others. So it's just people don't leave the dialogue with radically different views, but they leave with the shape of their heart pretty radically changed.
Well, I love that perspective. And so my follow-up is along the lines of a question I was asked several years ago when I was giving a presentation about the work that we were doing. And I was talking about, the importance of waking up each day, reaching towards the sky and bending that arc of the moral universe towards justice a little bit. And an African-American father said, I am all for that. And that is the long game that you're playing. But I also need to play a short game. And that short game is in response to what's happening in the streets, to my sons who are being arrested and potentially shot at and killed by police. And that really struck a chord with me. And so I need some help personally with exactly what you're talking about, because I love the idea of entering into these dialogues and diving into deeper conversations. But there are a lot of people in the LGBTQ community that are suffering at the hands of a different perspective or a different theological perspective. And LGBTQ people are losing their rights. Many of them are, self-harming, and going to other extremes. What would you say to those people who push back upon, we need change now. We need people to change their minds now because of what's happening in society?
Well, I totally agree that we need change now. Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things that we see is that, so I think just taking the queer community, let's just start with the queer community. Mm-hmm. At large, it is an incredibly diverse community. Okay. Right. So I just spent a week in Seattle for the Revoice community. Do you know anything about Revoice? Mm-mm. That's an organization that is created by and for queer identifying or same-sex attracted identifying, gay, LGBTQ, et cetera, Christians who want to live who are convicted along the traditional lines of sexual ethics. Okay. So that's a community, right? Then there's the fully affirming part of the LGBT community, and it is an incredibly wide range. But everybody in that, so across deep theological difference about how they themselves are called to live out their lives and their bodies and their relationships, everyone agrees that LGBTQ people should be protected and given the same rights. Right. So when, for example, somebody with a lot less skin in the game, so say you've got a straight cisgender pastor mm-hmm. who comes to a dialogue, he or she might not be thinking about gay rights, might even be thinking that to give certain rights to certain people would be to condone or something like that. That's a pretty typical response in some sectors of the church. But having spent a weekend with others and seeing, wow, even the people who hold the same sexual ethic as I do, but they identify as queer, they also need protections. We're talking about human beings. We're talking about my brothers and sisters. These are my siblings in Christ. So there's a growing realization that we are a family. And so what do I say to people who say things have to change now? I say, yes, let's do it. Let's work together. And I would say that is one of the biggest shifts that happens at a dialogue, where people start saying, well, that's like a political position, but this is my brother or my sister. It's sort of like, Gaza, Israel, whatever political legislation, people are starving to death in Gaza. You can see that they're human beings who need respect and dignity and all that. So I don't know if that's a direct enough answer to your question.
No,
but
that actually does help. Because that's one of the things that we get a lot of the times in a lot of these issues, but particularly, when we find ourselves in spaces where we're in the LGBTQ community, there's some people who, are very frustrated with the faith community, because while we continue this dialogue and an attempt to be more inclusive within the church, they're suffering at the hands of what, might be defined as bad theology or theological malpractice, because, they're being ostracized, and they're the ones that are suffering while we talk about it. And so, that helps me, invite them into that conversation. Like I said, I think it's a two strategy type of, a two lane strategy that we have, both playing the long game in these conversations, as we find deeper meaning and deeper trust with one another, and both of us transforming along the way in this dialogue, while at the same time trying to find places of justice that need to be enacted now because of the suffering that is taking place. So I think that's a big help. And like I said, I appreciate the work that you are doing and others are doing, and your participants are engaged in these conversations. So let's dive into those conversations just a little bit. What do you hear from participants in these conversations? What do they discover about themselves, about the people that sitting on the opposite side of this argument might be? What are some of those enlightening moments that you hear from participants in these conversations on both sides?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that a lot of cis het people discover that they have a sexual and gender journey too. But because they grew up as a majority, as people of privilege in that area, they haven't had to wrestle in many cases with their stories.
That's fascinating.
And then they meet their queer counterparts, and they're like, oh my gosh, you have really thought through this. You have really wrestled through what it means to live an ethical life, or, whatever that means to you. You have really done the work. And I'm just kind of like a newcomer, a kid, right? Mm-hmm. So that's one takeaway. The other one I already mentioned, sort of saying, wow, I thought if you believe this, that would mean that you didn't respect the scriptures. Well, there are different ways of respecting the scriptures. So that growing respect for just different ways of seeing things, different approaches to faith and to the scriptures. I remember one pastor saying, and this might seem so small, but it's huge over time. I will never laugh at a gay joke again. Like when I say gay, a pejorative gay joke.
Right.
And when I hear it, I'm going to think of the face of Joe, who I've come to love this weekend. And so that joke won't be funny anymore. And in fact, if I hear someone tell it, I'm going to say, you're talking about my friend Joe there.
Yeah, that's important.
So these are some incremental changes. And I think they're huge. They're not policy decisions. There's no white paper written. There's no denominational statement created after a weekend. But people's hearts start to shift towards each other, and they get curious about each other, and they've learned how to ask better questions, questions that aren't leading and judgmental, but questions that are really open-ended and compassionately curious. And that impacts all of our relationships going forward, different kinds of relationships. So those are a few.
I think that's a really important point, is that you spark people's curiosity. And when people's curiosity is sparked, then the door for learning and evolving begins. And that I think that's one of the brilliance of bringing these people together to have these type of conversations.
So if this piques somebody's interest and they were wanting to take part in this type of program, like how do you get involved with it? Is it a sign up? Is it an invitation? Like, what happens next?
It's an application. It's a pretty extensive application. It helps me. It's a completely confidential process. The facilitator, whether myself or another person, is the only person who sees these applications. But it allows us to curate every group for maximum diversity. So we're looking for people, not just their theological background, but also their familiarity with some of these issues. You don't have to be an expert at all. There's no requirement other than being willing to come with an open heart and to agree to some of these postures, coming as a posture in the posture of a learner. So you apply. And that's kind of your first test if you're serious, because I think it's a 5-page application. But it's so worth it. And people sometimes say, wow, I never thought about these things. This is really good to get me to think about. And then I reach out, the facilitator reaches out to, once they start sort of forming the group for diversity, 12, and then we gather and we come together. So we do a handful of dialogues every year. That's the core of our program. And then we also come into churches and model loving dialogue across deep difference. Sometimes our alum community will do that. So there's different ways that people can engage.
Well, Kristyn, it has been a delight. We appreciate you joining us this week for our time together at Good Faith Weekly. Kristyn is the Director of Dialogue and Convening at Christians for Social Action. And the program that she is a facilitator in is entitled Oriented to Love. It has been a delight to talk with you. Thank you for teaching us more about Oriented for Love. But Kristyn, before we let you go and head back to some French bakery there on the French hillside, Missy's got one last question that she wants to ask you.
So, Kristyn, as you know, our tagline at Good Faith Media is "There's more to tell." So, in light of your work and our conversation today, what is your more to tell?
I think my more to tell is the ongoing realization in my own life that it's okay to be wrong about something, that relational repair is possible. We do hurt each other sometimes in these dialogues, but that we can reconcile with each other, and that actually that's such a joyful discovery, and that's what the gospel is really about. It is about reconciliation. It is about repair. And so I find that a lot of Christians avoid being wrong and are mortified when they find out that they're wrong, myself included. And over the years, God has taught me that that's really rich soil for my growth. And so I love watching people. I love less the way it feels when it's me, because it never feels good to hurt. But to just lean across and say, okay, you know what? I didn't like the way I asked that question. Can I try again? Because I was downloading my beliefs there, but I really want to ask it in a more loving, open-ended way. Or, that's one of many, many examples, but just resting in God's outrageous love for all of us and then granting that grace to each other is a beautiful process and a beautiful demonstration of the gospel. And we avoid it at our own peril.
Wow. I love that. That's great. Well, Kristyn, thanks again for being on our show this week. You are welcome back anytime, my friend.
And I will send you my flight information directly following the pod.
Yeah, keep the baguettes warm. To our listeners, thanks for joining us this week. Until we meet again, keep living good faith.
You've been listening to Good Faith Weekly, hosted by Mitch and Missy Randall. This weekly podcast from Good Faith Media discusses matters of faith and culture.
Subscribe wherever you get your podcast and give us a like and a glowing review. We produce the podcast out of Norman, Oklahoma. Our music comes from Pond 5.
And we're supported by listeners like you. Learn more about us at goodfaithmedia.org.